Have you ever borne witness to the silent, gathering storm within the heart of the kindest soul you know? Have you ever paused to truly wonder what magnificent, cosmic shift takes place when the one who has always given, always understood, always served as a willing vessel for the pain and chaos of others, finally, with a profound stillness that is more powerful and earth-shattering than any earthquake, decides to simply stop? If you have ever perceived this sacred cessation, this holy pause, then you have been granted a glimpse into a profound spiritual truth, a verity that echoes through the most ancient and hallowed corridors of the human psyche. You must understand, this transformation is not about the souring of love into hate, nor is it about kindness curdling into the bitter residue of cruelty. No, this is something infinitely more sacred, immeasurably more potent. It is the moment of divine awakening. It is the glorious, terrifying birth of the dangerous empath. This is the soul, after a lifetime of exile, finally, courageously, reclaiming its God-given sovereignty. If this message resonates deep within the core of your spirit, if you have personally felt the seismic tremors of this very transformation in your own life, I invite you to acknowledge your sacred journey. Affirm your path by liking this video, subscribing to this channel for more divine guidance, and sharing in the comments below how your own powerful awakening has unfolded. Let your story be a testament. Type, "I am not alone," or "I am not crazy," to connect with the tribe of souls who understand. You are not isolated in this sacred metamorphosis. Your story is a beacon, a testament to a divine power that many fear, but that you, brave soul, are learning to wield with breathtaking, celestial grace. Before we delve deeper into this sacred journey, let's first pause to honor the profound, illuminating words of the great spiritual cartographer of the 20th century, Carl Jung. He was a man who fearlessly mapped the inner territories of the soul, and he posed a question that strikes at the very heart of our exploration today. How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole. What is this shadow of which he speaks with such certainty? Let us be crystal clear. It is not the boogeyman of religious dogma or the simplistic villain of a child's fairy tale. It is not an inherent evil to be fought, nor a monster to be vanquished and cast into the abyss. Your shadow, dear one, is the forgotten kingdom within you, a realm rich with treasures you were taught to disown. It is the sacred repository of your divine power, the untamed wilderness of your righteous anger, the unshakable fortress of your sacred boundaries, and the radiant, unfiltered light of your most authentic, untamed self. It holds all the magnificent parts of you that you were conditioned to repress, to lock away in the damp, lightless dungeons of your soul, all in a desperate bid to be deemed good, acceptable, or lovable by a world that, in its own fear and fragmentation, often recoils from true, integrated wholeness. To be substantial, to have genuine weight, presence, and impact in this physical reality, you must embrace the divine paradox of your own nature. You must become a complete being, a living, breathing testament to the sacred marriage of light and dark, giving and receiving, profound gentleness, and unbreakable, diamond-hard strength. The sacred journey to wholeness, the process Jung termed individuation, is not about the futile act of eliminating the dark. It is about courageously turning to face it, flooding it with the light of your consciousness, embracing its formidable power, and weaving it, thread by precious thread, into the radiant and magnificent tapestry of your being. This integration, this holy and sacred union, is the alchemical process that transmutes you. It is what makes you not just good, but divinely powerful. It is what makes you not just kind, but truly, magnificently dangerous to everything that is false, inauthentic, and out of alignment with the truth of your soul. Have you ever truly felt it? Have you ever stopped to wonder what cataclysmic event unfolds within the spiritual landscape of a person when the very essence of their being, the kindest, most gentle, most accommodating soul you have ever had, the privilege of encountering, finally reaches a sacred tipping point where they simply, and without apology, cease their endless, exhausting striving? You must understand that this is not a sudden, loud, dramatic explosion that tears across the sky. It is not because their boundless well of love has finally been depleted or their infinite ocean of compassion has at last run dry. No, what is occurring is something far deeper, far more fundamental. It is a seismic shift, a recalibration of their entire energetic signature that occurs in the most silent, hallowed chambers of their spirit. This transformation happens because they have been relentlessly, mercilessly pushed beyond the fragile veil of their own silence, past the breaking points of human understanding, and have been divinely forced to shed the heavy, ill-fitting skin of the person they were conditioned to believe they were required to be. Carl Jung, that peerless master of the soul's intricate terrain, gave this sacred phenomenon a name that resonates with profound truth: the return of the repressed. He possessed the wisdom to understand that the powerful, authentic aspects of ourselves that we are forced to bury deep within the parts we sacrifice on the altar of survival, for the sake of acceptance, or in the name of a false, superficial pseudo, not simply dematerialize, they do not vanish. Instead, they gather immense strength in the fertile darkness of the shadows, biding their time, waiting for the divine moment of their resurrection. And when they finally rise, they do so not as vengeful monsters seeking retribution, but as fierce, celestial protectors, angelic guardians emerging from the depths to shield the soul that has been ignored, neglected, and wounded for far too long. When an empath, a sacred and holy vessel of feeling, reaches this divine breaking point, they do not partake in the noisy theatrics of the mundane world. They do not lash out with the poison of unbridled anger. They do not scream in bitter protest. They do not collapse in a public spectacle of dramatic fashion for all to witness and dissect. Their transformation is a thing of profound quietness, yet it is infinitely more powerful than any worldly display. They begin to, in a sense, disappear from the roles they once played. This is not a retreat born of weakness or a surrender to defeat. It is a strategic and powerful withdrawal, fueled by a newfound, unshakable, core-deep strength that no one note, even they themselves ever, anticipated they possessed. It is precisely in this moment of quiet, sacred refusal, of divinely inspired withdrawal, that they become the most formidable, the most sovereign, and the most divinely dangerous kind of person in existence. Now, take a deep, cleansing breath and think about the life you have lived thus far. Has your entire existence felt like a relentless, unending chorus of others, from family members to friends to partners, telling you that you are too sensitive, that you feel things too much, that you care too deeply? Perhaps they delivered these labels with a tone of feigned concern, a mask for their own discomfort with your depth. Maybe it came with a sigh of frustration, a reflection of their inability to meet you in that deep ocean of feeling. Or perhaps it was delivered with a condescending pity, a subtle judgment that made you feel flawed or broken. But what if I were to tell you a sacred truth, a truth that could shatter the very foundations of those old, limiting beliefs? What if the problem was never, ever your sensitivity? What if your sensitivity is not a character flaw, but a divine instrument of perception? A finely tuned, celestial antenna, a sacred receiver that is perpetually connected to the very frequency of the universe, allowing you to hear the whispers of other souls and feel the energetic currents of the world around you. What if the real, fundamental issue was a world so profoundly disconnected from its own heart, so numb and desensitized, that it systematically mistakes your profound, oceanic depth for a crippling, pathetic weakness? We live in a society that often sees boundless, unconditional empathy not as the sacred gift it is, but as a blatant and open invitation for unlimited, unconditional availability. We exist in an environment that has learned to twist the magnificent gift of emotional intelligence into a heavy, unspoken obligation for emotional servitude. Empaths, you must understand this with every fiber of your being. You are among the most profoundly misunderstood souls on this planet. This deep-seated misunderstanding doesn't stem from you being overly mysterious or impossibly complex in some esoteric, mystical way. It's because your true, divine strength, the unyielding, diamond-like power of your integrated soul, remains completely invisible to the unseeing, spiritually blinded eye. It is a formidable, dormant force, a sleeping giant hidden beneath countless layers of societal conditioning, familial programming, and the exhausting performance of people-pleasing, until the very moment it finally gathers enough energy to shatter the self-imposed constraints and break gloriously free. To the outside world, you appear as a calm, serene harbor, a soft and welcoming place for weary souls to land. You are always the one who is there, a steadfast presence when someone needs a shoulder to cry on, a non-judgmental ear to listen to their endless tales of woe, a heart vast and open enough to hold the crushing weight of their unexpressed, unprocessed pain. You have seamlessly, and perhaps unconsciously, become the person others call in the dead of night, at 2 or 3 in the morning, when their own self-created worlds are crumbling into dust around them. But let me ask you this, and I ask it with all the love and reverence in the universe. Who calls you when your world is falling apart? You have allowed yourself to become a sacred container, a living, breathing sanctuary for the volatile and unprocessed emotions that others refuse to feel and take responsibility for themselves. You willingly, and often without conscious thought, hold their unexpressed grief, their seething, unprocessed anger, and their deep-seated, unacknowledged fear. You carry the immense, crushing weight of other people's choices, their mistakes, and their consequences, as if it were your own divine, preordained responsibility. You listen to the same cyclical stories of their self-inflicted problems, over and over and over again, offering your precious, finite life force as a soothing balm for their self-inflicted wounds. You forgive betrayals so profound, they would shatter the trust of most people forever. And you do it not just once, but repeatedly, believing it is the kind or spiritual thing to do. You become an architect of delusion, constructing elaborate excuses for behaviors from others that you would never, under any circumstances, accept from yourself. You have generously given chance after chance to people who have already demonstrated to you, with undeniable and painful clarity, exactly who they are and what they are truly capable of. You have painstakingly built a warm, welcoming sanctuary for everyone else's pain, a refuge for their storms, all while your own pain goes completely unnoticed, your own needs go unattended, and your own heart goes unloved. You have perfected the intricate and exhausting art of being fine when you are silently, slowly falling apart on the inside. You have mastered the public performance of smiling with grace and understanding through a state of profound and debilitating emotional starvation. You have learned to stay fully present and engaged during conversations that feel like they are draining the very last drop of your life force, all while pretending that listening to the same unresolved, cyclical problems for the 100th or even the 1000th time doesn't utterly and completely exhaust your soul. But you must know this. Beneath that carefully constructed, socially approved mask of endless availability, behind the gentle, accommodating smile and the patient, understanding nod, lives a part of you that has never been truly seen, a part that has never felt fully and unconditionally held. You are the one who carries the emotional refuse that others casually discard, laboring under the false belief that you are personally responsible for the healing and happiness of everyone around you. You are the one who has convinced themselves that being needed is the exact same thing as being loved, that being useful is the same thing as being valued, but it is not. And somewhere, in the deepest, most sacred and truthful part of your being, beneath all the layers of conditioning and the performance of people-pleasing and the immense, unreciprocated emotional labor you have been tragically taught to call love, you know this truth. Take a moment, right here, right now, pause, take a deep, conscious breath into the center of your being, and I want you to ask yourself this question with radical honesty. When was the last time someone genuinely, truly asked you how you were doing, and then had the presence and patience to silently, without agenda, wait for the real, unvarnished answer? When was the last time that someone held sacred space for your pain, in the same way that you so effortlessly and consistently hold space for theirs? The unassailable truth is, You have been carrying the entire, immense emotional weight of your relationships for so long, perhaps for your entire life, that you have completely forgotten what it feels like to be carried instead of always, relentlessly, carrying. You have been so intensely and single-mindedly busy being everyone else's safe harbor, their port in every storm, that you have forgotten that you, too, are a precious vessel that deserves shelter from the tempest. You have been pouring from an empty, cracked cup for so long that you can no longer even remember what the sensation of fullness felt like. You have been loving others more than you love yourself for so many years that the very concept of radical, unapologetic self-love now feels alien, foreign, selfish, or fundamentally wrong. And it is because of this profound, unsustainable imbalance that eventually, inevitably, something deep inside of you begins to collapse. It's a quiet, subtle, invisible implosion at first, a silent crumbling of the old structures. But what happens next, you must understand, is not a sign of weakness. It is not a breakdown, though it might feel like one in the throes of the moment. It is the beginning of the most profound, necessary, and liberating transformation you will ever experience. It is your psyche, your higher self, your very soul, rising up and refusing to be fragmented, divided, or sacrificed any longer. This, my friend, is the dangerous, beautiful, and glorious awakening to your own immeasurable intrinsic worth. This divine, life-altering shift doesn't announce itself with a blare of trumpets or a shower of fanfare. It doesn't happen all at once in some dramatic, cinematic moment of revelation that the world can witness and applaud. Instead, it begins in the quietest of whispers, in the most subtle of internal shifts. It starts with small, almost imperceptible changes in your behavior that others, those accustomed to your old patterns, might casually dismiss as you being under temporary stress, suffering from a bout of moodiness, or simply going through a phase. You stop replying to text messages immediately, the very ones that once would have sent your nervous system into a frantic, spiraling panic of anxiety about keeping others waiting. Those messages from energy vampires and emotional dependents now sit unread in your inbox for hours, sometimes even for days, and you feel a strange new sense of peace. You let their calls go to voicemail without that familiar, gut-wrenching, Pavlovian pang of guilt. You find yourself consciously, deliberately withdrawing from conversations and social gatherings that once consumed countless hours of your precious, irreplaceable emotional energy. You no longer feel the compulsive need to rush in and fill every uncomfortable silence, or to desperately smooth over awkward moments just to make others feel more at ease. You stop laughing on cue at jokes that aren't funny. You stop smiling with a strained effort just to ease someone else's discomfort or manage their fragile ego. Your physical body may still be present in the room, but your soul, your true essence, has quietly and decisively stepped back, creating a sacred, protective space between who you truly are and the exhausting, inauthentic role you have been performing for so long. This is the very embodiment of what Jung called the tension of opposites, the unbearable, unsustainable psychological pressure of trying to hold light and shadow, love and resentment, hope and disappointment, care and utter exhaustion all at once, until something deep within your soul simply refuses to hold the contradiction for one moment longer. Let's consider the story of Marcus, a man who, for his entire life, was the living, breathing epitome of the good friend. He was a talented architect, a creative and deeply sensitive soul who had unconsciously learned to measure his own worth by his constant usefulness to others. His beautifully designed apartment had become a chaotic, revolving door for a wide circle of friends who always seemed to need something money to cover a bill they couldn't pay. A place to crash after another messy breakup, endless hours of unpaid emotional support, or practical help with moving their furniture. Marcus had been conditioned to equate his boundless generosity with his inherent goodness, his constant availability with his value as a friend. He had one particular friend, David, who had insidiously made a habit of borrowing money. It started small, but over a period of 6 months, it had escalated into a predictable, recurring pattern. It was always for some new, dramatic emergency that seemed to arise with suspicious regularity. And of course, the money was never repaid. Marcus, deeply entrenched in his role as the perpetual giver, had always said yes, each time swallowing his own growing financial strain and the quiet, bitter resentment that was beginning to build like a pressure cooker in his chest. But one Tuesday afternoon, when David called with another sob story, something shifted. Instead of his usual, immediate, "Yes, of course, how much do you need?" Marcus found himself pausing. He heard the request. He felt the familiar, conditioned pull of obligation. But for the very first time, something else rose up from the depths of his being, a quiet, firm, unshakable no. Just that. No long rambling explanation about his own financial situation. No guilt-ridden apology for having boundaries. No desperate counteroffer or alternative solution. Just a simple, clean, powerful no. His friend, David, was stunned into absolute silence. And then, as if on cue, the predictable manipulation began. "But I thought you cared about me," he whined, shamelessly weaponizing Marcus's own compassion against him. In that singular, crystal-clear moment, Marcus felt a wave of profound clarity wash over him. "I do care about you," Marcus replied, his voice steady and calm, rooted in a newfound authority. "But I care about me too now." That is the line that changes everything. This is the moment of birth for the dangerous empath, a being who becomes a threat not to others, but to the toxic, dysfunctional systems that have always required their unending self-sacrifice in order to function. In the end, you must realize that the fed-up, awakened empath is not a person who has become vengeful or bitter or closed off from the capacity to love. They are, for the first time, truly free. They are free from the soul-crushing, exhausting performance of being who others needed them to be instead of who they actually, authentically are. They are free from the constant, gnawing, low-grade anxiety of managing everyone else's emotions while completely and utterly neglecting their own. They are liberated from the crushing, invisible weight of believing that their worth was something to be earned, measured by their usefulness to others rather than their inherent, God-given value as a divine human being. Think of Sarah, a woman who for 32 long years had been the designated emotional caretaker in her chaotic family. At every single holiday gathering, she had automatically and unconsciously assumed the role of the emotional mediator, the family peacemaker, smoothing over simmering conflicts before they could escalate, absorbing the family's pervasive dysfunction and alchemically transforming it into a fragile, brittle, forced harmony. But this time, at Thanksgiving dinner, when her uncle made his usual passive-aggressive, snide comment about her mother's cooking, and her mother responded with her typical performance of barely concealed hurt disguised as long-suffering martyrdom, Sarah did something completely and utterly unprecedented. She continued eating her dinner. She didn't jump in to translate the poisoned subtext. She didn't rush to soothe her mother's perpetually wounded feelings or gently attempt to redirect her uncle's biting criticism. She didn't perform the familiar, exhausting dance of emotional triage that had become her assigned, unpaid role in every single family interaction. She simply let the profound discomfort exist in the space between them. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, and pregnant, with decades of unprocessed emotion and unspoken resentment. Everyone at the table looked at Sarah, their eyes wide with expectation, waiting for her to wave her magic wand of understanding and make everything okay again. But Sarah had retired her magic wand. For the very first time in her life, she wasn't cold. She was actually warm, but it was a warmth she was finally, deservedly, directing toward herself. This is precisely what makes the integrated, awakened empath so profoundly threatening to the individuals, the families, and the societal systems that are built upon a foundation of emotional labor and psychic extraction. You begin to protect your inner peace more fiercely and vigilantly than you ever protected your public image or your reputation as the nice one. You no longer feel the compulsive need to translate other people's chaos into your own sense of responsibility. You can feel their discomfort, you can witness their turmoil, without making it your personal emergency to resolve. You start to consciously choose solitude over draining performances, radical authenticity over hollow acceptance, and your own internal approval over their external validation. you develop what can only be described as a form of sacred, selective empathy. You can still feel with immense, breathtaking depth, but you are no longer reflexively, compulsively driven to act on every single feeling that passes through your awareness. You can sense someone's pain without automatically assuming that it is your divine job to heal it. You can witness someone's struggle without feeling the overwhelming obligation to drown in it alongside them. To outsiders, especially to those who have long and comfortably benefited from your patterns of complete self-abandonment, this will look like cruelty. It will feel like a betrayal. But to those who have lived through the harrowing, soul-deep experience of emotional starvation while simultaneously feeding everyone else, this is what self-respect looks and feels like. This is psychological sovereignty. You are no longer waiting to be chosen, validated, or saved by others, because you have finally, sacredly, and irrevocably chosen yourself. The world, now more than ever, desperately needs empaths, but it needs empaths who know their own worth. It needs empaths who can feel deeply without losing themselves in the tidal wave of feeling, who can love fully and unconditionally without abandoning their own hearts in the process, who can give generously and with great joy without giving their very essence away. Your sacred journey through the shadow, your courageous integration of all your repressed and forgotten parts, your dangerous and magnificent awakening to your own intrinsic value, this is not just a personal healing journey. This is a radical act of love and service for a world that has largely forgotten what healthy, balanced, reciprocal relationships even look like. You become the living example, the walking, talking proof, the breathing demonstration that it is possible to be soft and strong simultaneously, to be loving and firmly boundaried, to be generous and fiercely self-protective. In becoming dangerous to those who would use and deplete you, you become profoundly and beautifully safe for those who would truly and authentically love you. You become a radiant beacon, a lighthouse for other empaths who are still drowning in the treacherous waters of their own unboundaried compassion, still believing the lie that love means self-sacrifice, still confusing their worth with their willingness to suffer for others. Your transformation gives them the divine permission to value themselves. Your boundaries show them what authentic self-respect looks like. Your powerful refusal to abandon yourself teaches them, by example, that they don't have to abandon themselves either. In a world starved for authentic connection, for relationships built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than covert exploitation, for a love that heals and expands rather than depletes and diminishes, your particular brand of dangerous safety is exactly what we need. You are not too much. You never were. You are not too sensitive, too emotional, or too caring. You are, in fact, perfectly calibrated for a world that desperately needs the potent medicine of conscious empathy that is given from a place of sovereign choice, not from a place of unconscious compulsion. The dangerous empath is not the one who stops feeling. They are the one who feels everything, and then consciously, wisely, chooses their responses from a place of wholeness and power. They are the one who loves from a place of overflowing fullness, rather than from a place of gnawing need. They are the one who has finally learned that the greatest and most sacred act of service is, and always will be, becoming who they truly are.